As you can see, you might have already picked up on this. Former Senator Jon Tester of Montana is with me. Maritsa Giorgio also with me. They are the hosts of the Grounded podcast, which is just on Substack now, right? You started up on Substack. Is that correct?
That's
Yeah, we
exactly
did. And oh my goodness, the Substack community is so lovely. Like it's
Yeah.
I think they're just so welcoming and wow, it's so different from some other platforms I've been on.
No question. And some other networks for that matter.
Yeah.
It's a friendly place, and lots of friendly faces, and a lot of folks who are just deeply engaged and care about the news and care about what's happening in this country. And Senator, I don't have to tell you what we're going through right now in America. You know this all too well. And just in the last several minutes, the Associated Press put out a news alert, and I asked the question: Are we already crossing some constitutional red lines? And Trump using military force and local law enforcement. The AP reporting that the National Guard troops there in LA have already temporarily detained civilians in the LA protests over the immigration raids. That's according to the commander in charge there. And he said about 500 of the National Guard troops have been trained so far to accompany agents on immigration operations. Senator, your response to that, let's just jump right into it. I always thought you're not supposed to do this, posse comitatus and so on.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, if you look, Jim, if you look back, the people, Republicans were told, don't go out and do town hall meetings. So you're going to cut off your constituents. So the constituents want to hear their voices heard. So they're standing up, and there may be a knucklehead or two in the bunch, and they may be put in by the folks who are the immigration people too, by the way. But the truth is the vast majority of these people just want to hear have their voices be heard, and now they're going to use the military to arrest them. My God, I'm going to tell you, have we crossed the line? I guess we've crossed the line. I mean, if you take a look, Jim, at the first term of Trump, and we had all these protests all over the country, and then they quit. And that because people were being heard. I believe that's the reason why. And now they're back, and it's crazy. And I'm going to tell you, everybody I talk to, they just shake their head and say, what the hell is going on? And how do we stop it? Because it's just out of control. It's just I don't know. I don't know where to stop, actually. The immigration thing, most people I know want the folks that are undocumented, that have committed crimes out, kick them out of the country. No questions asked.
Sure.
But this has gone way beyond that. And, the Miller dude in the White House, the bald-headed guy, he said, we want to kick out more people. We want to kick out more people than Biden did, as they stop an immigration bill about a year ago right now. They stopped an immigration bill that would have fixed this problem, but they wanted it for political purposes. So people ought to apply that back. This is about politics, and it's about trying to take over this country and take away our Constitution, take away our Declaration of Independence, and the list goes on.
Well, and they started this whole thing out in L.A., Senator, it seems to me, right around the time that Donald Trump and Elon Musk were going at one another. And you know how Trump likes to play the distraction game. And lo and behold, we get this crisis out, this self-manufactured crisis out in L.A. And Maritza, I'm wondering what you're hearing from folks in Montana, because what the senator said there is absolutely right. People, they don't want gang members, they don't want criminals in this country. If they're here illegally and they're committing crimes and so on, that's a whole different situation. But what we've seen with these ICE raids, they're going after families, they're going after kids, they're targeting schools and workplaces. Maritza, what are people saying in Montana?
Yeah, well, I haven't talked to a ton of folks in the last day or two, but the people in my bubble certainly are saying, what is happening? I thought they were going after the criminals. These are not criminals. You see these videos, these horrific videos of mothers, throwing up, vomiting on the street because they realize they're about to be separated from their children. As a mom, I just your heart just breaks. You can't imagine. I cannot imagine the pain of that. And because of smartphones, we get to see these things. And even though they're painful, I think we need to watch this. We can't look away. We have to watch what's happening. But I was really frustrated the other night, Jim, because I was watching, I don't know, one of the local stations in LA. They took over the national broadcast, and I was watching kind of the updates. And there was one reporter by the Waymo cars on fire, right? And a couple of Waymo cars on fire. And nobody's saying that's okay. I don't think we should light cars on fire. I don't think that's right. But, I was explaining this the other day, when we get to a scene with a camera as journalists and we see a car on fire, we go get the video, right? Because it's dramatic.
Yeah.
But this other report, this reporter was talking about how, nobody's listening to the calls for peace. But her counterpart across town, a few blocks away, where there were blocks and blocks of peaceful protesters sitting down, and she
Right.
said, this is not what I'm seeing. You might be seeing that in that one intersection where a couple cars are on fire, but what I'm seeing is completely peaceful. We've seen the videos of the people dancing and singing and just having trying to inject some positivity and light into these
Right.
protests. And so I just think that's so important in this conversation. We are
Totally.
going to see the destruction, and those are the sexy videos, but there's a lot more when you look at the whole scope that we are not seeing. LA is massive. And I just talked to a friend, the other day in Santa Monica. They said you
Yeah.
can be in Santa Monica and you don't even know this is happening. It's just like
Right.
downtown LA. So these are important things that we need to keep highlighting, because people see one clip and say, oh, all of LA is on fire.
Yeah, and Senator, I think you hit on something that was just exactly right on the money a few moments ago when you talked about how they're trying to meet these quotas. Apparently, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Division has ordered its 30 regional offices to meet quotas on inspections of employers' documentation. They've been trying to hit these quota numbers, and it seems like that's what's driving a lot of this. Stephen Miller's looking at the numbers, and he's saying we want more, more, more.
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. We
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're tougher than the previous administration because
Yeah.
don't forget those birds are woke. You know what I mean? So I mean that's what and it doesn't have to be like this. The truth is when I served in the United States Senate and bureaucrats were making decisions for Montana, those weren't the best people making the decisions. We tried to give them input of what it's like. Now you got Newsom saying, the governor of California saying, you know what, guys, let me handle this. And the president's coming in saying, "You don't know California. I know
Yeah.
California. We're Bigfooting your ass out of the way, and I'm going to do what I want to do." That's not how it should operate.
And I'm trying to, and Senator, I'm trying to think, what would the reaction be in Montana if a Democratic President Joe Biden, were to say, we're going to send the military into Montana to do law enforcement there? What would
It
the
would
reaction be in Montana?
it would be the same as if Joe Biden said, "I'm going to do anything to Montana." They would be up in arms. They would be
Yeah.
going crazy, and they
Well,
should be. By the way, the governor has certain powers, and we should respect them. And the president doesn't respect anybody. It's pretty obvious on this issue.
And
I
what do
do
you think? Go
remember,
ahead. Yeah.
Jim, during COVID, I covered COVID extensively in Montana, and that was my beat, and we did something every single day. I mean, that's all I did
Yeah.
all day long. And I remember there were these rumors going around that then Governor Steve Bullock was going to declare martial law, and people. I mean, this was a huge rumor, and there were
Yeah.
posts like, "Go to the grocery store, stock up. He's going to have tanks in the streets." But look what's happening.
Yeah.
By the way, that never
Martial
happened.
law is
Let me
okay as long as it's not in my state, as
Yeah,
long
let
as
me
it's in a
just be
blue
clear.
state. Yeah.
That never happened in Montana.
And,
Yeah.
and,
No.
and literally in a couple days in Washington D.C., there will be tanks in the streets.
Well, there
Right.
and I mean, I want to get to that, but you mentioned Gavin Newsom, Senator. I do want to ask you what you think of Governor Newsom, how he's been handling this. He accused Trump of a power grab and saying that democracy is under assault. What's your assessment?
Well, I think he's correct, and I think that it's a prime example of the president not knowing the Constitution, not knowing states' rights, not knowing how if you work with people, you can get some stuff done. If you go in and say in my way or the highway, things tend to go to hell, and
Yeah.
and that's the way it's going. I think Newsom has done as good a work as he can do. The problem is the president doesn't respect states' rights in this case. Maybe he will in some other case, but not in this case. And I will tell you, I don't think that flies in any state of the union if people think about it.
Right, exactly. And I mean, the other issue in all of this is the human element, as you mentioned, Maritza. And yesterday on our program, I had the journalist Jorge Ramos on, and he did a fantastic job on the program. He brought in this woman who was there with him on the scene. She's a pregnant woman, U.S. citizen, who was arrested at her home when she was trying to say, listen, you can't come in here on my private property, and start arresting people, saying this to the ICE and the Border Patrol agents who were there. And she's pregnant. She's about to deliver in a week. And they roughed her up and almost body slammed her to the ground and arrested her. And she's telling this whole story live on my show yesterday. I just want to tell the viewers out there who are asking how she's doing, I'm trying to figure that out myself. It sounds like she's going to be okay, but my God, this is the human component of all of this. What do we do? As Senator Tester said at the top of this, bad guys, criminals, gang members, sure, I get that. But they're not going to meet these numbers. They're not going to meet these quotas with those characters. They only can do it if they round up everybody with brown skin and an Hispanic last name. That's the problem
Right.
here.
Well, it's like putting in a targeted cut for budgets and saying we're not going to touch Medicaid when you can't make that cut without
Yeah.
touching Medicaid. I think that I just keep thinking back to this. Of course, it's the 10th anniversary of Hamilton, and the OG cast assembled for the Tonys this week and sang a medley. And I keep coming back to that song, History Has Its Eyes on You. And how will we look back on this? And you think about a pregnant woman, and it's coming back to the humanity. I've had
Yeah.
a few conversations in recent days with people who are very, very strong in their faith and saying to me, this is not what I learned growing up, as a Christian, growing up as a Catholic, growing up as a Mormon. I've had all three of those conversations this week. This is not what I learned from my religion and my faith about how we should treat not only immigrants, but human beings. And
Yeah.
so I think that this is a moment. And I always think about, there's a park by my house called Fort Missoula, and I bring my son down there. I walk my dog down there. And that was an internment camp after Pearl Harbor. And it's hard for
Wow.
me to not think about that in this moment. Like, what are we going to look back on in 10, 20, 30, 40 years in this moment, and what we did to actual human beings, and just have no regard for them as human beings.
Yeah.
The other thing, Jim, is, and I don't need to tell you this is a country of immigrants. I mean, unless you're Native American, you came here. It's what Ronald Reagan said made this the greatest country in the world. That's what Ronald Reagan said. Okay.
That's right.
And now we're pushing out folks. I mean, I don't know how food is going to get processed in places where they have vegetables and fruits. I don't know. I don't know how maintenance is going to be done on buildings. I really don't know. And then to top that off, he's directed Rubio, the Secretary of State, to get rid of all the folks of Chinese descent. If we'd have done this during World War II, the Manhattan Project would not have happened. I mean, you know what I mean?
Correct.
It just doesn't make any sense, short term or long term. Get rid of the criminals, get rid of the crooks, but damn it, let the folks that are here trying to do and make an honest living be here and do that. They're important for our economy.
Well, speaking of getting rid of the criminals and the crooks, I not to make a hard segue here, but the president is going to try to have this military style birthday bash in Washington this weekend. And the tanks were rolling into Washington the other day, Senator. I'm sure you saw that. The military-style vehicles were rolling into Washington. And, I just have to ask, I hate to make the same kind of analogy and the same kind of counter-argument every time raising this question, but can you imagine if Barack Obama had the tanks rolling down Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. for a birthday party? I mean, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you that not only would the Republicans have been pissed, the Democrats would be pissed too, by the way.
Right.
They wouldn't have put up with it. And, from the very beginning, and it's happened in the first term and it's happened in this one, this guy has incredible admiration for Putin and Xi Jinping and every dictator there is out there. And that's what this is about.
Yeah.
This is about, showing that he has control and power. And that's not how this country's set up. The people have the power. That's who has the power here. And he's given the power for a temporary basis, and he shouldn't be abusing it. And unfortunately, that's not been the case.
And I think, Senator, one of the big issues here, and you know this from your days up on Capitol Hill, is that Donald Trump coming into his second term in office, he ought to have more wins on the scoreboard than he has right now. Where are the wins? He has no wins on the scoreboard. The big, beautiful bill is still waiting to get through Congress. There are obviously House Republicans have rallied around it and gotten it passed. It's over in the Senate now, but Senate Republicans, this is according to the New York Times, they've made it clear. They want to make major changes to the legislation before it's gone through the Congress. They want to pare back the cuts to Medicaid. Obviously, that's an issue that's going to hit people in Montana. But your thoughts on this bill, and I think some of this is driving what we're seeing out there in LA. He can't get wins in Washington, so he's looking to score points where he can on the immigration issue.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, the truth is
Yeah.
that the big beautiful bill is a piece of shit, quite frankly, and they need to take it back, and they need to rework it. Not only in Medicaid, but in SNAP. They need to Job Corps, Trio, public lands, national debt, all the above. Go in there
Yeah.
and rework it. And you know what? It'd be great. And people long for this. Do it in a bipartisan way. And then go back to the president and say, President, you're the executive, but we're Congress. And we're going to do our job here. And their
Yeah.
job is to make sure that that bill works for every state in the union because it doesn't right now. It's not a good piece of legislation. And I think most of the people that I served with that are still in the Senate know that it's not a good piece of legislation. And they're being bullied to sign it. Unfortunately for Trump, the biggest bully left, the Elon Musk, he took his checkbook and said, I'm out of here because I think this is a piece of garbage too. So,
Well, and I'm noticing, Senator, you got a T-shirt there that says "Keeping it Rural," and when you call a bill in Washington a piece of shit, that's keeping it rural. Should we call it the big boulder of bullshit? What should we call it here? Then
you got to get a lot of the same letters going. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we like alliteration when we're right. Well, or spelling out names like Pelosi, right?
There-
Also, I think you can't ignore this. Like, Elon Musk and Doge, their whole goal is waste, fraud, and abuse. We're going to get rid of all the waste, fraud, and abuse. Some
right.
of the Republican senators' issues with the big, beautiful bill, it's about the fact that it actually raises our debt ceiling. It actually adds to the deficit. And then we're going to spend $45 million on a parade. And not just a parade, 16
Yep.
million of that, 16 million for the road repairs after the parade. What,
Yeah.
how is that
And
not
100
waste,
million
fraud,
in
and
L.A.
abuse?
Apparently. Apparently, it's
Yeah.
over 100 billion for what they're doing in L.A.
So how do you reconcile that? We're getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, but we're going to have a parade that's going to tear our roads up to the point that they'll need $16 million in repair.
Well, and I'm going to talk about some of this with Steve Schmidt in just a little bit here. I do want to, since you mentioned Elon, we've talked about Elon a couple of times. Elon Musk bending the knee, Senator. Apparently, according to the New York Times, he phoned Trump before publicly expressing regret for the attacks that he said went too far on X overnight when he said that Trump was on the Epstein files and so on. I mean, it's pretty wild what's happening when you've got Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, bending the knee. He's bending the knee.
Yeah, well, they must have something on him. Epstein was enough. I don't know what to say. It was like a game of chess, one-upsmanship, and all that stuff. It's what happens when you get two people with huge egos, two people with big wallets that are having a public fight, which would have never ever happened 10 years ago, but it happened now. I don't think it was good for the country, quite honestly, and quite honestly, everything that Elon did during Doge and all the money he was going to save, it showed that it didn't happen. I mean, he got the information, probably a lot of classified information he shouldn't have, because there was no oversight whatsoever on what he was doing. So, I can't relate with those folks because, quite frankly, I've had to work my whole life, and so I don't relate with folks that have that many damn zeros in their checking account. I can't do it. So they're going to do what they're going to do, and they're still going to continue, I guess, to be friends now for a while until one of them pisses the other one off, and then they'll go back at it, I guess.
Yeah, well, but also Elon Musk, I mean, he relies heavily on the federal government for all kinds of government contracts, and Trump was threatening those contracts. So one has to think, Elon saw the money in the trough perhaps being hauled away, and that doesn't work for him, I guess.
Yeah. The number I heard was $38 billion, which, by the way, is a hell of a lot more than he cut with his Doge thing. He could have been a hero and just give back all the money he was getting, then he could have saved a hell of a lot more money.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, Senator, I don't want to hold you up all day, but one of the questions that I mentioned this to Maritsa before we got started here that I wanted to talk about is, what are we missing? What are we not talking about? What are folks in Montana talking about that we're missing here? I'm in San Francisco right now on a work trip, but what are folks in Washington not thinking about, not talking about? What are we missing in the heartland?
Well, I mean, I'm going to tell you on the big, beautiful bill, everybody thinks that the cuts to Medicaid only affect the people in Medicaid, when it affects everybody, because you're going to have a lot of rural, a lot of frontier hospitals close their doors, maybe all of them, in fact, because they're hanging on by their fingernails now. I think when you talk about doing things like doing away with Job Corps, which people may see that's a small thing, those are small things. in the overall picture, they are small things, but they're damn important things because they take people who need help and give them help and make them producers in our economy. And they're incredibly, incredibly successful programs. But they are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. If we listen to Senator Lee and the public lands, if these guys sell off our public lands to the uber rich in this country,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what, our economy in the state of Montana, and I think throughout the West in particular, but the whole country will take a giant nosedive. And then we haven't seen, and we've talked about this a lot, but people are talking about it on the ground. We haven't seen the impacts of the tariffs yet. I
Yeah.
think a few more months, we're going to see those tariffs. We haven't had ships being unloaded in LA or Seattle or God knows where else in this country for some time to speak of. And that's going to start having some effect on on the economic chains of goods in this country.
And you're a farmer. Farmers are going to get hurt in all this too.
Oh yeah, man, they're
Yeah.
going to be the tip of the spear. We've got to have
Yeah.
markets to sell into. Foreign markets are critically important. Some of those foreign markets may be gone now. And then from the input side, especially with Canada, man, most of the inputs we get in a state like Montana, but I think it's the same throughout the country. Most of those come out of Canada, and
Yeah.
you just don't replace those with domestic production. There will be a lot of people broke by the time they get replaced. Let's just put it that way.
And Maritza, I have to say to you and to both of you, congrats on the podcast getting launched. You had Tim Walz on recently. A lot of great guests. Maritza, what's this experience been like? You were also in a corporate media world and I guess a cable news world, national news world, and it's so much fun doing this. It's freeing. You get to spend a lot of time with Jon Tester. That's an added bonus. But what's it been like? How you doing?
Well, I did make a joke with him yesterday. He said something about I had an appointment. He's like, "Oh, that's not going to be pleasant." And I said, "Well, I have to host a podcast with you, so I think but I'm joking. It's been really fun. No, it's honestly, we
Yeah.
kind of went out on this. We've been building the plane as we fly it. I mean, it's literally the two of us, and my neighbor John helps with some audio, and we just kind of said, let's try it and see how it goes. And I think that it's important to fill. There's a void right now, and people want to hear from Jon Tester, and people want to hear some of
Yeah.
these candid conversations. What I love about our format is that we can have long form conversations. It's not just a 3-minute package, Jim, as you know, like you
Yeah.
can't get everything. I mean, any editor who ever worked with me would just probably curse me all the time because I always wanted to put more in and more in and more in, and I was always told to cut it. And so to be able to have really authentic conversations, for Senator Tester to be able to say the F word, these are all these are all
Wait a minute. I
like,
haven't heard that. Are you holding back on me, Senator? What's going on here?
I'm trying to be a good boy today, Jim.
Don't do that on my account. That's for damn sure.
But I think it's just one of those things, like, people are craving these authentic conversations. They don't wanna see a Stepford news anchor getting up and just reading, like, they wanna hear us talking about these real things, and I've always tried to do that throughout my career. And, our industry, Jim, like, it's a scary place, and I was I was one of the casualties in a mass layoff event at my former network, and it was devastating. I loved my job. I loved what I did, but this is a bright spot, certainly. And we were on with Heather Cox Richardson, gosh, two days ago now,
Yeah,
and
I
or
saw that. That's great.
yeah. And like, she was right. I said, "Do you think this is the answer and this is the future moving forward as legacy journalism seems to be crumbling?" And she said, "Well, yeah, look how many people are on with us right now." So that gives me a lot of hope. And to work with Senator Tester in this capacity has been just, so much fun for me. He probably would say differently, but
No. It's just been thrilling. No, I'm going to tell you that the truth is, part of this, at least what I'm trying to do, and I think Maritza is too, is give some backbone to some public officials to go out there and start fighting
Yeah.
and talking about, make America great again. I mean, you take a look at what this president's done over the last 5 months. We're going to need to make America great again. That is a fact.
Yeah.
Pushed away our allies, screwed up trade, our bond market's upside down. I mean, everything you want to take a look at, the immigration stuff is nothing like it should be done, because the truth is that all this stuff is what makes America great. And I think it's really unfortunate. And Heather Crox Richardson says something that I think is really important. And
Mm.
that is, she says, if you're out there and you got a concern, grab your phone, cut a video, and put it online so people know what you're concerned about. I think that's really important. And if your elected
Yeah.
reps won't listen to you, maybe they'll look at you on, on online.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And I mean, I keep hearing "Make America Great Again." I rather see some hats that say we are better than this, because I think as a country we are better than what we're getting right now. And when you're using the National Guard to do law enforcement, to conduct immigration raids, when you're threatening protesters the way Trump has been doing the last couple of days, because they might show up at his big birthday bash in D.C., his military dictator birthday bash in D.C. That's not America. That's not the America we grew up in, Senator. I'm sorry, it's just not. And
No, it's not.
I think we're better than this. That's what it is at the end of the day. I think that's why people are coming to platforms like Substack and other independent media routes.
I hope that's the case, and I hope they
Yeah.
continue to, and I hope they can continue to get good information, because if you get good information, you can make good decisions, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Senator, I'm sure you got some farm stuff to get to. You got to keep it rural as always, and appreciate your time. And Maritsa, really appreciate your time, and best of luck. It looks like you're off to a fantastic start. So my hat's off to both of you.
Thanks for
so
having
much.
us on, Jim. Thank you.
You bet. Good to see both of you. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Thank you.